Hey guys, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name's Sarah and I go by Bookish Beginning on every single app you could possibly think of. Today we are going to be talking about my least favorite books of 2023, and I decided, of course, to dress on theme. I don't know how well you can see it, but my sweater says, "This sucks," because it sucks that I did not like these books. Now, if you know me, you know that I am the least critical person on the face of the planet. I am always trying to find something I like about the book I'm currently reading, but there were still a couple who snuck in there as books that I did not enjoy in 2023. So, without further ado, let's get into it. First one, I wasn't going to talk about this one because I've already donated the book, like I don't have it anymore. All the other books on this list I finished, so this was the only DNF on this list, and that is Best Men, which was disappointing because I really wanted to like it and I just didn't. Oh my gosh. I DNF'd it at 60%. So basically what this book's about is there's this guy, don't remember his name, don't remember any of the characters' names in most of these books, but there's this guy and he has this best friend. Him and her have been like tight like this their whole lives, I think. And one day she comes up to him and she's engaged, and that kind of throws him for a loop. That's like, it upsets, their status quo, and he has to adjust to this new journey that his friend's going on. Through that, he is forced to cross paths with the best man of the groom, I believe. And he does not click well with this guy. Obviously, I think, I don't know because I didn't finish it, I think he ends up falling in love with this guy. The thing is, I don't know if, one, like, the humor of the book wasn't for me. I didn't find it to be very funny. Two, the best friend, like, I just could not get behind her actions. She became one of those people who everything had to be about her. She wasn't very considerate of what her best friend, the main character, was going through. And granted, like, he could have been a little bit more considerate, a little bit more open-minded, but so could she. It did not read as a very good, genuine, healthy friendship to me. There's one point in the book, and this was, I think, the point I ended up stopping. I can't remember, but there's a point in the book where, for whatever reason, he misses the fitting, the dress, her dress, trying on, picking a dress. He misses that for whatever reason. I don't know why. And he shows up and he feels terrible. He's very apologetic, but she just ignores him and she gives him the cold shoulder. And I'm like, okay, it sucks that your best friend wasn't there, right? But they're your best friend and you should be able to, like, move past it because it's not the end of the world. He didn't skip your dang wedding. And then the other thing that didn't work for me is I got 60% into this book, and this book is marketed as a romance. There wasn't a lot of romance happening. Like, they had the occasional hangout together, but I could not get a good read on, does this guy even like the main character? Are they gonna get together? I don't know. So yeah, I stopped that. I DNF'd that. That one just was not it for me. It did not work. Next book. This was a Kindle novella. The thing that disappointed me the most about this book was I feel like there was a concept there that could have been a really good book. But because it was a novella, it just didn't have enough time to really develop that. So that was Guard You by Laura Golightly. It was like a 50-page novella, so really there is no time for any character development. But basically what this is about, there's this guy and he has a childhood sweetheart, love of his life. He goes off and he is gone for a couple years. I'm assuming it was military. I don't remember. I read this in like last May. And he comes back and his childhood sweetheart's gone. So naturally he's kind of heartbroken about that. But then years later, and this is where the book picks up, he is in private security and he gets hired by this like notorious mafia crime lord guy. He hires the main character to be the bodyguard of his wife. In walks the wife, and who is it other than his childhood sweetheart? You've got forbidden romance, it's mafia, so there's the suspenseful like aspect, and it's a second chance romance. So the concept is there. With 50 pages, you can't develop that. You can't like bring in the angst of like trying to sneak around, trying to like suppress your feelings for this person, but ultimately like the feelings are too strong, then trying to sneak around without like putting either of your lives in mortal danger. The novella aspect of it really hurts it, but then what was really this book's like death knell for me was that it just was not written well. The book just kind of ends with no real satisfying resolution to the conflict. It's just like, oh yeah, we're fine now. Yeah, would not recommend. That one was one I saw on Twitter, and it just would not recommend at all. Next up, this was a book that I had seen so many reels about. Cover was awesome, and I just couldn't. I just couldn't. It's one of those books where the idea works better in theory than it does in practice, because you could just pick way too many holes in it and be like, this would never happen in real life ever. And that is We Could Be Villains by Megan McCulloch. Look at this cover. I need a good superhero book. I desperately need a good superhero book. I liked the first Heroine Complex book by Sarah Kuhn, and that has so far been the only superhero book that I have enjoyed. So basically, this book, the premise is there's this main character, and she is a die-hard fan of this superhero movie franchise. She loves it. Think MCU level superhero franchise. She just loves it. One day, she is going to work, and she notices a guy following her, and she's like, that guy kind of looks like the main villain of this superhero franchise that I love so much. But that's impossible. He must be like cosplaying or something, right? And she comes to find out that these superhero movies, they're based on true things. The movies are just a cover-up for real superheroes and supervillains duking it out. Basically, what happens is that guy she saw was the villain that she knows so well from these movies. He threatens to kill her parents if she doesn't help him take over the world. And so she kind of goes along with it. The superhero team kind of ends up coming in and helping her. It's like, you're going to be a double agent. You're going to report to us what this guy's doing, blah, 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 blah. And at the same time, there's like a school play going on. It's like, this was not a good book. No. Partially because, and a lot of reviews said this, is that it was very fanficky. But my big issue, it just didn't make sense to me. I'm like trying to wrap my head around the logistics of how this superhero team would make this work convincingly in real life. The whole like producing movies to cover up for actual like battles between the heroes and the villains, because that immediately takes the stakes away from like the threat the villains pose on the real world. Because basically what happens is there will be like a battle in a warehouse between the heroes and the villains, and they'll just be like, oh, we're just filming for the next movie. It doesn't work. The battles between the heroes and the villains, they're just not very serious, because you wouldn't be able to cover up the Battle of New York, right? Like, think of the first Avengers. You would not be able to cover that up if that was like a real life event. If there's no destruction to any of the cities, if there's no casualties, not that I'm saying I want a civilian casualty, but if there's no civilian casualties, if it's just them fighting in a warehouse, I'm like, okay, who cares, right? There's no stakes there. Then another issue is it's very YA. It's almost closer to middle grade. It's very, main character, very immature, I feel like. And I don't take the villain very seriously. He wants to take over the world, but like, how are you taking over the world? I don't know. And I don't care. It was just weird. I'm like, am I supposed to be rooting for the villain? Am I supposed to be rooting for the heroes? Do I want her to have this little flirtation with the villain? I don't know whose side I'm on. And the main character, her as narrator, just frustrated me a lot. So this book was definitely, out of this list, one of the most disappointing for me, because I had high hopes. I wanted to enjoy it, and it just still shows that I have a gap where really good superhero books should be. Next, I think the next one on this list is one I have donated as well. So I'm not going to talk about it very much, because it was more like I just didn't care. I didn't care about anything that was going on in this book. I couldn't tell you what the book is really about, other than someone dies and the mystery has to be solved, but it was not very well written, in my opinion, and just kind of boring. And that's Halloween Party by Agatha Christie. I read it because it was supposed to be the inspiration behind A Haunting in Venice, and when I saw the trailer for Haunting in Venice, I'm like, that looks creepy, that looks fun, I'll read the book it's inspired by. I still haven't seen A Haunting in Venice. I don't know if it's good at all, but the book was so boring and not creepy, and The mystery to me was not very compelling. It just was not a very good Agatha Christie book, which is really weird. I've read some ones that I've enjoyed, but not that one. Not a fan. Next! This next book was sent to me for free, and I really liked the cover, but it was not good. And my mom read this at the same time I was, and I finished it before her, and I was just like, don't keep going. It doesn't get better. And that is Housebrook by J.C. Burton. This is about a woman who doesn't have a job, fosters 5 dogs at a time, and is currently couch surfing. Don't know how she makes that work. She is currently crashing at her friend's house in Florida when all of a sudden this man shows up in the middle of the night, and she, naturally defends herself, and she has a frying pan and is ready to attack this intruder. And he goes, "What are you doing in my house?" And she's like, "This isn't your house. This house hasn't been sold yet." And he's like, "No, I just bought this house." That's the male main character. He is a house flipper who happens to be a multimillionaire. So basically what happens is, like, he's just bought this house. Her friends, for some reason, did not tell her that they had sold the house, and also there's no realtor stopping by being like, "Yo, this house is sold. You need to get the hell out." He's basically like, "I need you to leave because this is my property." Then he ends up feeling kind of bad because she's upset and has nowhere to go. And so she strikes up a deal with him. She says, "I will be your personal chef while you are working on flipping this house. I will live in the guest house out back. And in exchange, you don't kick me out." Good for everyone. And naturally, they end up falling in love. Blah, blah. Can you tell how done I am with this book? Like, it pissed me off for a multitude of reasons. One, it's very insta-lust, which I'm not a fan of. I feel like I've read it done well, but I've also recently read a lot where it's been done really poorly. One of the major problems for me is both of these main characters are coming from terrible experiences in relationships. His is that women only want to be with him for his money. So he does not trust easily, does not open up easily. Her issues stem from she is recently divorced, and her husband kind of stole all her money, I think, and he was also borderline, like, controlling and maybe abusive emotionally. But I also can't say for sure because you don't really get any flashbacks or any insight whatsoever into what has caused both of these two characters to become so traumatized, because they tell you, this author tells you, that these two main characters are really going through it. They're really struggling. But you don't see that on the page, which I feel like insta-lust and past relationship trauma that makes you wary of entering into another relationship, those don't mix. Neither character does any work to heal. At the start of the book, you can't even tell that they're, for lack of a better word, broken. So that was really frustrating to me. I was like, are you traumatized? Because I don't see it. So that was one issue. Another one is that the female main character, she really frustrated me at times. Her. Obviously, there's the lack of believability surrounding the fact that she is able to couch hop with no job and also be able to take care of 5 dogs at a time. She was also quite immature, particularly when she realizes that she has real feelings for the love interest, because her response to that revelation is, "Oh, I'm just gonna ignore him. Despite the fact that we live in the same house, despite the fact that we've been sleeping together for weeks, I'm just going to ignore him. I'm going to lock myself in my room and say I have work to do, get mad at him when he comes in and asks if I'm mad at him, and then get even more mad at him and continue to ignore him when he asks me to come to dinner with him, and then tell him that I'm not ignoring him when he asks why I'm ignoring him." That sounds like a bright idea.
I remember thinking, I'm about to beat this bitch up.
It was just such a frustrating response. That could be tied back to her past relationship trauma, but the thing is, we never see insight into her past relationship. And there's a whole chunk of this book that is missing that would add such better insight into the characters. A lot of my issues with this book can be summed up in that it was all tell and no show. I feel like a big thing with storytelling is you have to show, don't tell. And a big issue in this book for me was that it was so dialogue heavy. It was just conversation, conversation, conversation the entire time. When I feel like a good book is like you have the conversation, but then you can also experience at the same time how the main character is reacting to the conversation emotionally, what they're thinking, what's their thought process. And that's through, the internal monologue that breaks up the dialogue. But instead, this is like pages and pages of just dialogue, just conversation. And I'm just like, I wish I could connect to the characters and what they're thinking. But no. So it was just very weird, the dialogue, the way it was paced, what was happening when. It just was very weird and did not work for me. And finally, the last thing that really didn't work, it's all about pacing. In a romance book, there's a third act conflict, third act breakup, and then they spend some time apart, and then they get back together. The third act breakup in this happened in like the last 15 pages, and then it was resolved like 5-10 pages later. That doesn't work! That doesn't work! The best thing I can say about this book, undoubtedly, were the dogs. I loved the dogs so much. I thought the dogs were so cute. But the rest of it was just a big fat no. Next. Now this one hurts. I wanted to love this one. I saw nothing but good things about this one, saying, oh, it's like this heartwarming found family Christmas story. Oh, I just loved it. Oh, it was so amazing. And I was prepared. I was fully prepared for like, okay, this is less about a romance and more just about friendship. But it did not live up to any of that for me. It was such a frustrating book. While at the same time, there were elements I genuinely enjoyed, which I think made the frustrating parts all the more frustrating, was because I'm like, I don't know how to rate this book because there are parts that I just loved, but the parts that I didn't like, I really didn't like. And that was The Christmas Orphans Club by Becca Freeman. I wanted to love it. I really did. This is about a group of friends who spend every Christmas together since, for whatever reason, they don't spend it with their families. One of them is an actual orphan. The other one just either are estranged from or don't get along with their families. So it all started with Hannah and Finn. They started this tradition when they were in college, and Hannah is the only real orphan, the only actual orphan. She lost her parents in high school, but she has a sister who she is estranged from. And one night in college, on Christmas, she is hanging out alone at her dorm when all of a sudden this guy shows up. And he's all dressed up and he's like, come on, we're going on an adventure. And it's like,
what happened to hello? How are you? My name is.
But that is Finn. And what starts this night is a tradition of just silly little Christmases spent together as friends. So they're best friends, inseparable, and over the years they add 2 more to their group, Priya and Theo. You experience all their Christmases together, and this is all leading up to their last Christmas because Finn is about to move across the country. Hannah is really struggling with that, and she also has a boyfriend who she is all kind of having a hard time committing to. And then Finn is dealing with, I'm about to leave the only home I've ever had. I'm about to leave my chosen family. And he's also kind of dealing with his unrequited feelings for Theo. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of drama. And you get to see, like, maybe not every single Christmas, but you see a lot of the significant Christmases, including ones that sparked a fight between Hannah and Finn and had them not talking for a whole year. So it's basically exploring this friendship, exploring what happens to your chosen family as you grow and change. So in theory, it sounds great. Found family, chosen family, like Christmas together, oh, good vibes. Where were they? There were some good vibes. I don't want to be too harsh on this book because there were some good vibes. But for me, Hannah, little Miss Hannah, did not work for me. And I understand where she's coming from. She lost her parents in high school. It's like devastating, and she's estranged from her sister, so the Christmas Orphans Club is like her family. That is her unit. And I even understand like the whole being scared of change. You don't want things to change. You like things the way they are. But she was not a very good friend. Because God forbid anyone slightly change their Christmas tradition. For instance, there is a Christmas where, you know, they're opening presents at Theo's apartment and they're gonna do something. I don't know what they're gonna do, but they had some sort of plan they were gonna do. But Priya's like, oh, I have to go. I'm having lunch with this guy who is only in town every so often. I think she was having lunch with the guy and maybe their families too. She's like, I'm gonna go I'm gonna go eat with them and I'm gonna come back. And Hannah acts like the world is ending and Priya is the worst friend ever. I'm like, she's leaving for 2 hours. She's gonna come back. And it was just so many instances of that. She is incredibly possessive of her friends. She does not want anyone intruding on her Christmas celebration. Their Christmas celebration is only for them. It's a lot. It's a lot to take. And it's just like, she doesn't really take accountability. She doesn't really have much self-awareness. She isn't aware of the instances in which she is in the wrong. I'm all for a character who needs to go on a journey into likability. I feel like there are a lot of characters who you might not like at the beginning of the book because they have to go through character development, because they have to do the work. But I don't think she does the work. She has a light bulb moment at the end and is like, wait a second, am I a terrible friend? Am I being a little self-centered? Wait a second. Oh my gosh. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem, it's me. But I feel like, and I'm a big proponent of characters going to therapy. I feel like she needed to go to therapy. And I was really trying. I was trying so hard to be forgiving of her throughout the book, but there were just too many instances in which she just frustrated me. And like, granted, like, a lot of people said, oh, the fight between Hannah and Finn, like, when you find out, like, what it was, they're like, okay, that's so childish. Why are you going to stop talking to your best friend for a year after this? And I'm like, yeah, Finn, 100% immature for not wanting to talk to Hannah after what happened. He's just cutting her out completely after this one thing. But also, Hannah didn't take much accountability. Like, if you know, you know. Granted, she was not in her right mind. Alcohol, drugs, does that to a person. You aren't capable of making very good decisions. But I feel like Hannah should have been like, I know I wasn't in my right mind, but what I did was a massive breach of the friend code, and I'm sorry. And then I still feel like if she said that, like, Finn wouldn't have forgiven her because he was being incredibly immature about it. But then Finn would have been like, okay, it sucks that you did that, but I know you weren't in your right mind, and therefore I accept your apology, right? I'm not going to give up however many years of friendship because of that. But that's not what happened. No, not at all. And then the other issue I had with this book was that I know I said I was like going into it, I'm okay if there's not a lot of romance. The romance, what was there, wasn't done well enough for me. And then the other issue that a lot of people brought up is that, what's going on with Priya? Like, Priya and Theo as like integral members of the friend group, like, you don't really feel that. They're just like there almost to drive the plot, especially Priya. It's like she did not get enough love from me and did not get enough development. She was just there to kind of drive the plot and bring about the whole, like, Hannah, do you realize that you're not being a very good friend right now moment? So this book really, it just was not the feel-good book I was expecting it to be. In fact, it made me quite frustrated and not much in the Christmas spirit. So, those were my least favorite books of 2023. Have you read any of those? Maybe you have a different perspective that will make me change my mind, but I doubt it. I think like the only one that could be up for debate is the last one. it just wasn't. It did not work for me. It really frustrated me, but that experience is not the same for everyone, and you know, everyone's opinion is different. And you're totally valid if you liked those books. I just did not. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment down below. Comment down below what your least favorite book of 2023 was. I want to know. Tell me. Let me know. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!